Okay. Are you getting audio or you don't know? Okay, we're getting audio. Good evening. Welcome to 2020. My name is Peter Alford. I'm the President of the Gungahlin Community Council, and this is our first meeting of 2020, which is important because it is an ACT election year, correct? Thank you for coming along, for those of us who are here live and for those of us listening in. I'll just give you a quick recap of some council's been involved in essentially since the bushfires, because our last meeting was on the 12th of December, so it feels like quite a lot's happened in Canberra and in Canberra region in that time. Amusingly, our last talk at our last community council meeting was about bushfire preparedness. So, look, the first thing I want to mention in chronological order is the community consultation, the community panel done for the Gold Creek homestead site has completed. This was a very heavyweight, which is good, experience that was run by the Suburban Land Agency to prepare a community brief for the sale of this site in the coming months. And there were 30 people selected to be part of that. We met over three Saturdays, so 9 till 3 type sessions, and we produced some consultants, and I'd like to commend the SLA for the quality of that engagement and the results that were produced, and that report's available online, or you can ping me and I'll send you towards it. But it was a really good engagement, and hopefully a sign of things to come in terms of engagement. We had an AGM late last year, and we had 2 new members join the executive. Shah Jalani, who's just walked in, and Manul Haq, who unfortunately is unwell and cannot be with us this evening. In terms of other activities, I had a meeting with Suzanne Orr early in December after the meeting to speak to her about the Community Council's concerns with the proposed changes to the town centre plans. She took those on board, but we've not had much action from that. And subsequent to that, early in this year, I spoke to a couple of developers who own property in the town centre, and they shared their concerns about some of the changes in the proposed, some of their concerns with the proposed changes as well. Really trying to find out whether the Community Council was going to be open to a discussion about what might be possible, and fortunately, what they were asking us about or asking me about was pretty consistent with our standard policy, so we'll see how that unfolds. So that was kind of the preamble. The other big news is that the GCC, Northside Community Services, Communities at Work, Barnardo's, and at least one other stakeholder has forgotten, have come together to reboot the Celebrate Gungahlin event, the big Gungahlin festival, which ran up until 2017. It'll be back in 2020, so quietly put down Saturday the 7th of November as the date for that. So keep your ears and eyes open for more about that very soon. So enough of the preamble. Tonight we have 3 presentations, a team of people from EPSDD and associated organisations about the Casey sites that have been identified as for community use. We have a presentation from Evo Energy about their 5-year strategic plan for the ACT gas network and related issues, and we hope to have an update from Transport Canberra directly on the announcements they made last week with changes to the light rail and bus network changes. So without further ado, I'll ask Leslie to jump forward and grab the microphone.
Thanks, Peter.
And the clicker.
Oh, a clicker.
And the clicker
too.
thing does the clicker thing.
Okay, a clicker as well. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. My introduction is there. Leslie Cameron. I'm the Executive Group Manager of Planning, Land and Building in the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Department. Now, I wasn't originally slated to give this presentation, so I'm glad we managed to get it changed in time. I've been in Canberra a total of 3.5 weeks, so anything I'm going to say about this, as much as I know about this project, okay? So the consultants I'm going to be introducing know a little bit more than I do. If any of you have been to presentation before, we are talking about 2 blocks of land in the Casey Group Centre that have to be handed back to government as part of a development that was started several years ago. A little bit of a reminder, about the process we've gone through. So the land has been in developer hands since, I don't know if you can read that, since 2010-11. In September 2019, one of my staff, she wasn't my staff at the time obviously, but did present here. And Peter, your minute taking via video is actually very useful, because we're able to go back and actually watch the whole presentation and see what she said. So that was quite handy. And at that presentation, the department, the directorate, explained what was happening with the consultancies and undertook to come back in early 2020 to explain and present to you the results of those. So we're doing we have the consultants are here. They will tell you about their projects. 2 assessments were undertaken, one about the community and recreation needs and one commercial needs, retail and commercial. And that was just so that in order for us to work out what we want to do with those blocks of land in future, we need to have some kind of evidence, some kind of facts and some kind of knowledge about what the community actually needs and wants. So that was the whole point of these. And so tonight we're up at February 2020, so our consultants have come back. They have the results of what the work they have done. So they'll be presenting their findings and their analysis to that. The box, the whiter box to the right-hand side is like for steps to the future. We can't say too much about that because we really are just at this, we are gathering the information stage. So at some stage we will need to analyse the reports and the evidence we've got from our consultants. We'll need to go through those. We'll then go back out into some form of community engagement. We do have one of our comms and engagement people here who can help if necessary, but that will inform our land release program in the future and what we end up doing with the blocks. I cannot give you any definitive times about that though, because there's a number of complexities around things happening in Gungahlin, Casey. There's a few things happening that we need to work out, and including what we might do with the 4-year strategic land release program. So I will hand over to, I'm not sure who's going first. We're doing community and recreation needs first.
Thanks, Leslie. Oh, yes.
Right-hand clicker.
Hello, my name's Erin. I'm from Urbis. And me and my colleague Isabel did the community and recreation needs study for the Casey Group Centre for these blocks that Leslie just pointed out. The point of our study was to understand through desktop research what might be the best use of these sites. Initial planning for the sites 10 years ago made provision for a lawn bowls facility, and our study was just to test this, see if this was still the case or whether there might be a better use of this site. The site could have been available for a number of different uses, and we were just trying to determine, given the broader strategic planning context, given the demographics and population growth and what we know of current provision, what's the best use of this site for community outcomes. So our study involved doing a document review. We looked at key strategic documents, including the ACT planning strategy and the ACT social infrastructure strategy. We did a social infrastructure audit which just mapped current provision of open spaces and community facilities, both just the geographic spread of this and also the types and the sizes of those. We did some key stakeholder engagement with ACT government directorate staff. We looked at demographics, current and future demographics. We analysed some social infrastructure trends, so things like how are people using social infrastructure, how is it being provided, what's the most efficient way to provide social infrastructure, and what are the community benefits from social infrastructure. We applied some benchmarking to the site using benchmarking that was outlined in the ACT social infrastructure strategy, and we developed up some options and then tested those and provided some recommendations. And then we provided some case studies just to give some evidence as to how this has worked in other places that could apply to the Casey Group Centre. Is there any questions on that? No. So some key contextual findings. We understood Casey Group Centre to be a sub-district catchment. So when we looked at the hierarchy that ACT government has adopted, there's a hierarchy of regional facilities that serve sort of ACT or Canberra-wide. There's sort of district level, which is they're often located in town centres and they serve a catchment of around 50,000 people. Then sub-district catchment are facilities that serve, that are usually located in group centres and serve a catchment of around 25,000 people. So we understood that this Casey group catchment is a sub-district catchment. So we are applying the community facility needs based on our understanding of what that catchment, the size of that facility should be to serve that size catchment. We understood that the Gungahlin urban intensification localities as outlined in the ACT planning strategy specify that higher order facilities should be located in town centres and they serve a broader catchment of around 50,000. So it's understanding, you know, what kind of a facility would be located in Casey. It's a sub-district facility. Higher order facilities would go in the town centre of Gungahlin. We looked at population growth, and so over the last 10 years there's been significant growth, but it's now sort of stabilised into the future. We saw that there was a bit of a trend of younger families in Casey and Gungahlin, whereas there's a more established community in Nichols. So there's a bit of a diverse population in terms of age groups. And there's a slightly diverse community, particularly in Casey, where there's a higher increase of people who speak a language other than English, so a lot of Indian, Chinese and English people moving to the area. So in saying that, we're looking at trying to meet the needs of these diverse demographics in the best way possible. The audit, and I don't expect you to be able to see this, but basically we just mapped everything, all the social infrastructure in the catchment area. So we understood the geographic spread. We also understood the sizes of those facilities and, as far as we could tell, the sort of function of those as well. So you can kind of see just from the numbers that there's quite a lot of open space and rec and fewer community facilities and arts and culture facilities. Our assessment key findings, I should also just noted there's a lawn bowl study that's happening concurrently. The findings of those haven't been finalised, but when we spoke to Active Canberra, who are managing that study, the indicative findings were that there's a decline in traditional model of lawn bowls membership, and that the provision of a new lawn bowls facility might have implications for the viability of existing lawn bowls. So we took that into consideration when understanding whether a lawn bowls facility was appropriate for this site. There is a concentration of childcare and education in the area. There's only one arts and cultural facility and no flexible spaces available to support local artists or cultural activities. There's no sub-district size community facility in the catchment. So there's a couple of smaller local community facilities, but no purpose facility. And there's no indoor recreation facilities. However, there are indoor facilities associated with a lot of schools. So we came up with sort of three options to test a bit further. We said there's a lack of indoor recreational facilities, a lack of arts and cultural facilities, and a lack of sub-district community hubs. And we went down into another level of detail to test which one would be the most appropriate for this site. So when we assessed the indoor recreational facility, we understood there's a number of schools that have indoor sports facilities, and there may be opportunities for shared use. This is a trend in social infrastructure provision to make the best use of sports facilities is for sharing with schools. There's also a plan for a new facility in Throsby in the future. And the key thing for us was mostly that traditionally these facilities rely on the private sector to manage, and there's currently no interest from private sector to manage a new facility like this. So the site could remain vacant into the future, so undetermined when that facility would be able to be used by the community. When we looked at arts and cultural facilities and assessed that a bit further, those kind of facilities are usually determined to be a higher order, larger facility. And when we spoke to Arts ACT, they said it's best located in a town centre to serve a larger catchment of 50,000 people. Arts ACT also said they weren't aware of any unmet demand other than a dance, and that could be addressed through an extension of the Balconnen Arts Centre. And they also suggested that flexible space and a community hub could be used for certain arts and cultural activities if the design requirements were appropriate. And a community hub we sort of determined to be the best option for this site, to be tested further with the community, as we saw that there was a gap in the provision of high quality, larger multi-purpose community facilities. Current facilities are small and aged and too small to serve that larger sub-district catchment of sort of 25,000 people. We also thought that a well-programmed, well-managed multi-purpose space is really critical to new communities, to bring together diverse communities for events and activities. It can function as spaces for programmed activities, or it can be hireable space. And we saw a sort of a key gap in that in this catchment area. So that will sort of go out and be tested with the community further and refined further, but that's where we landed in terms of just our desktop research. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Oh.
You
So take that one.
answering skills.
Yeah.
And the question was?
I think it aligns with what I remember was mentioned by Deepak Gupta in regards to the new MLA for the Gungahlin region. Was that there's a distinct lack of community space, and I think they were looking at, from memory, doing something with the what's the name of the where the showgrounds Epic Park. They were thinking about doing something there. So if it was to be used as a community hub, I think that one of the things that they were leaning towards was multi-use community hub / multicultural was that sort of aspect that they were talking about focusing on. So I'm assuming that if it was to be used for something like that, the government would be interested in that would pair with or dovetail with what they were already thinking anyway in regards to that.
Some feedback we had when we were doing some stakeholder consultation was that there's a lack of cultural spaces that serve cultural needs, so like spaces for prayer rooms and things like that. And I think, in my experience, these sort of multi-purpose spaces can be really key to bringing different groups, demographic groups together and raising awareness of different cultures and sort of key celebration gathering places in the community, which I think, driving around the catchment and understanding what's there, that seemed to be lacking, that sort of focal point for the community, I guess.
And even we found as a community council, sometimes we did find it difficult to find spaces in order to have our community council meetings, and we sort of had to move around to a few different places. So, I mean, we've even experienced that ourselves. So the lack of...
I think a really well-designed space, it's like a source of pride for the community as well. It's like the traditional sort of town hall. It's a place where people come together. It offers gathering spaces and things, and it's also that sort of key focal point that, it's a marker for the community as well.
So I think there was something similar in Ford, wasn't there? Next to the shops there was a small little sort of space that they had there. Yeah. Yeah, so when you think about it, there's not a lot of these types of spaces that are available. So I think your study might have touched on something.
Yeah, thank you.
Question back here.
Yeah, good evening. Look, I think I pretty well agree with your best option there. And I don't know the right organisation to consult other than perhaps someone like ACT Policing. But I'm just wondering if you've looked at that area where you've got that young youth demographic, where they need facilities to go and do things to get rid of that pent-up energy, so they don't want to go and commit petty crime and other things. So down at Yarrabee Pond there's a skate park and some facilities there, but it's a long way between drinks, if you like, to get to Yarrabee Pond. But a facility that incorporates a community hub, but also that could be used to attract youth in and do things with that age group. Yeah, definitely. And maybe another skate park and other things, activities that they would find attractive to get involved in.
Yeah, definitely. We can note that in our recommendations as well. And I think you're right. I think trends have moved away from providing age-specific spaces because they're not as efficient. They don't get utilised as much. So the sort of old sort of youth facility is less. People aren't doing that as much more. They're more moving towards these multi-purpose spaces. But I think you're right. They need to. It should be designed. There should be maybe elements in the surrounding open space that cater to young people, or the programs should sort of be aimed to offer a variety of things for different age groups. And I think that coming to, like, if there's if it's a large enough facility and designed flexibly enough, you can have a seniors group over in one room, and you've got some youth activity over there. And it's one of those things that brings the community together, and the sort of incidental, bumping into each other.
Yeah, old people help youth, but generally I'm part of the old crowd now. We can cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Allegedly. So just one small point of data accuracy.
Yes.
The aged care facility is not an aged care facility.
Sorry.
It's a retirement living site.
Yes.
And we've had a lot of feedback that aged care is something that's missing in Gungahlin. My initial conversations with EPSDD indicated that the consultation would be on requirements would be at least district-wide and not just a 3-suburb catchment. What I've noticed in Gungahlin, people do travel a lot. So there are a lot of people who go to the Casey Group Centre who are not located in Ngunnawal, Casey or Nichols. And clearly some of your rationale here is based on a district-wide approach, like plans for a new facility in Frosby have been factored into some of this assessment. So why was it such a constrained footprint?
I think we were working in the parameters of the ACT planning strategy. So that had determined that this was a group centre, and a group centre's catchment was several suburbs and around a population of sort of 25,000, and that Gungahlin was the town centre that served that larger district catchment of 50,000 people. And so that was our, we were just working within the sort of the strategy framework that had already been developed by ACT government. I take your point that people do travel here from outside those suburbs, but I guess whether it's appropriate for that higher order facility of, so we're sort of proposing, maybe a 500 square metre facility around that sort of size, 300 to 500 or so, and a 2,000 square metre facility is kind of your next like district size facility, but you wouldn't put that here because there's not the associated other.
But we don't have that here either.
No, but you where you would locate that would be with other sort of more civic and larger community and cultural facilities. Right. You wouldn't, even if this area is attracting people from suburbs outside of those 3 suburbs, it's still in our view probably not the appropriate place for that really higher order larger facility. But I mean a facility of.
Okay, so I think you may be one of a small number of people actually looking at the planning strategy and following it. Would it be fair to say that we should have this same sort of process going on for all the group centres and their catchments?
I believe it is.
Oh, it is. Oh, yeah. Great. Okay. I mean, now, having been a little bit just critical, I'm conscious that I have been. It's clear that a community facility is of great interest to a lot of Gungahlin residents. It's comes up in our surveys. We'd be happy to share our survey data with you should you ask. But often I want a really large facility. So I note that site is a lot bigger than 500 square metres. So are you planning for something else?
I would like to see those. Would you like to talk?
Sorry, I was just wondering.
Yep.
I was just going to say on that very.
No, that's fine.
I can handle it. It's all right. I was just going to say on that. I think it is interesting that there is such demand, and we'd love to see those survey findings. But there is such a demand, and a couple of people noted that there is a gap in that type of space. I wonder if the other planning that's going on in these group centres and for the Gungahlin, whether if there's more of those facilities located, there'd be less demand placed on this area as well. Like maybe it's just generally across the area more broadly as well. But I think there is subsequent planning happening.
Leslie, are you okay for me to take it? Or did you?
Sure.
So I was just going to note, hi everyone, Laura, I'm with the comms team at Environment Planning. Oh, sure.
I'll duck up the front briefly. So hi everyone, my name's Laura. I'm with the communications team. Sorry, not in frame yet. Am I now in frame? Comms team, EPSDD, and something that I guess we really want to note with the work that's happening around Casey is that we are very much aware of the broader district-wide needs and I guess want from community in terms of those facilities. So something that Leslie touched on that we'll be doing over the next couple of months as we dive deeper into these findings is looking at them in correlation with the broader district needs and wants. So that's something that we'll be pulling together and looking at the conversations around Gungahlin Town Centre as well, and looking at how those all intersect so that we come back with the best possible option that integrates all of those. So whilst we are talking about Casey tonight, I guess we just wanted to note that we're not taking a siloed approach and that we are looking at those facilities more broadly across the region as well. So, sorry, I'll hand back.
Any other questions? Sorry. Yep.
In regards to the indoor recreational centre, the comment little interest from private sector for new facility, how was that tested?
That was given to us from feedback with Active Canberra? Active Canberra.
Which is based on what then? So I know of an indoor sports proprietor that had signed a lease for somewhere else in Gungahlin, which ended up falling through, and is quite keen to operate another indoor recreational facility in Gungahlin, noting the growth here. And we've seen study after study coming out saying that there is demand and there is need for indoor sports facilities in Gungahlin. So I'd question why that's been overlooked.
Yeah, okay. I think there was a recreation study done recently as well.
Is this the gymnastics, basketball, what was the other sport? Can't remember. But basically, essentially said, we don't want to do multi-sports indoor facilities, we don't do single sport facilities with huge backing from the sport. And I guess it was pretty narrow, and we were somewhat critical of the report.
I guess I would also just note that our study was desktop research and consultation with stakeholders, but it will go out for broader consultation, and so we can take some of these comments on board and maybe test some of that at the next stage of consultation.
Yeah, that'd be good. And the new facility in Throsby, what is that? What's the soccer one? Okay, it is the soccer one. The World of Soccer.
Soccer one.
Home of football. Okay, but again, you can have anything you like there as long as it's soccer, is how I understand that facility. So, and futsal.
So I think so we can test some of this stuff, and the purpose of this was to present our findings, get your feedback, take that to ACT government, and then go out to the community consultation. So we'll take everyone's comments. Oh, you've got another question?
Just so you know, in our polling and our survey, by far the facility most wanted is an indoor sports facility across Gungahlin, like by a mile.
Can I draw back to the point that was made before, which is that if I was presenting this essentially with the size restriction that you were talking about, say, for example, it was 500 square metres. And I won't quote you on it because I'm sure that you're just sort of pulling that out. But given the size of the full block, essentially, surely somebody has got like a grid square map and sort of saying that this is what we're concentrating on here. If we're to put that aside for a second, what about the rest of the space?
I believe that's the next presentation.
Okay.
And just on the size that we're putting forward, we're at a very high level stage here, and we're just talking about we're using benchmarks and that hierarchy that was adopted by the government, where a sub-district facility is around within sort of this, a scale of sort of 300, 500 square metres, and the purpose of spaces like that are to not be overwhelming in size, but to serve a catchment of about 25,000. Whereas if there's large facilities, there might still be demand for a larger facility, but locating that somewhere like Gungahlin will still serve this catchment It's just not located here.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next speaker, but we just note there are a very limited number of sites that available for community use left, so there's just a little bit of concern about all those things.
So I'll just make one quick comment. In relation to your question, the land is zoned for commercial use. So under the planning scheme, it allows a range of uses: commercial, retail, recreation, sport, leisure, that sort of thing. So therefore, that's the sort of needs analysis that we commissioned. So we didn't look at other uses. So we're not just saying one use for that site, but it has to be within that band of uses that the land is on for. That's the reason for going out for these.
Is it possible to get a copy of the deed? The lease conditions, please? I mean, because the community's been under the idea that these two sites were going to be sold to the guy, whoever it was who bought the Casey Group Centre, and then he would service them and hand them back to the community, so the government, for community use. So I'm very twitchy of mixed use.
So, from what I gather, the government owns the land at the moment. The government owns the land at the moment.
I don't believe we've actually accepted it back yet. I'm not entirely sure.
Right. But that's the intention, to get the land back. So when the land becomes ACT government land again, it can change the lease to whatever it wants.
It still has an underlying zoning.
That's kind of not what happened here.
No, the government, no agents. So given a government agency will own the site, and if they want to change the lease conditions, they could put in a request to change the zoning conditions, a normal DA. At least that's on my understanding of it. Somewhere, I'm guessing. Yeah. So there's some detail around community expectation for the use of that land that we'd see some clarity on. Okay, so, yep. All right. Is it a good question?
So just for the record, there's a certain block nearby here that's zoned light commercial, but it contains many apartment towers. So it's completely within the government's purview to alter or amend zoning as per previous evidence.
Okay. There's no other question. So I think the feedback for us is there is demand for that flexible multipurpose community space. Questions around the size, we can clarify that, and that there is a documented demand for indoor recreation and possibly demand from the private sector, and we can take that feedback back. Yeah. And then some questions around lease as well, which I think you'll get back to.
I'm trying to get a handle on how big 500 square metres is. How big is this room? It's like 30 by 40? What's that? 30 by 30, 20 by 5, 20 by 20. That's it's certainly bigger than 20 by 20, so that's 400 square metres. So is that about the sort of size, a little bit bigger than this room?
Oh, much bigger than this room. We've got examples.
Well, you said 500 square metres. I'm just trying to get a handle on.
This is not 500 square metres.
Okay.
We've got, this might
20
be
by 20.
This is maybe 100.
10 by 15. All right, 150. Okay. Right. Okay, I'm just trying to get a handle on it.
So say 5 times this room.
Okay. Okay.
And we've got, and if it's useful as well, we've done some case studies. So when this came out, we looked at examples of facilities that could be like this, and they're very decent looking facilities.
It's definitely a need. I'm just trying to get in my head how big 500 square metres is.
5 times this, maybe.
When this study was coming out, one of the things I kept raising, and this is where I think it's unfortunate the way the directorates are split up within ACT government. Within Casey, there is another block of land that currently sits with Sports and Rec. That was meant to have been a play space with grass field and some half courts and things like that, similar to what Moncrief's got. On there was also the provision for a community facility, a hall or a building of some description. And this is where I think is disappointing is that your scope was to these two blocks, but then ignoring another block, within a kilometre that actually fulfills some need as well in relation to community services and could actually house a block like that. The other issue is that the bowling club, the Lawns Bowls Club, was part of the marketing program for Casey. So people have bought into Casey on the expectation that a lawn bowls club is coming. Now, it may not be viable today, that's fine, but there needs to be something similar offering. But also the other block that I was referring to, again, people have bought into Casey expecting a play space to be built, and it's still been left on there, and it's completely out of the scope of what you guys are doing because it's not the same directorate view and same thing. It's really, really unfortunate, and I think it's a missed opportunity.
I'll take that back. 'Cause I'm not. Is that correct?
Okay, pressing on. Okay.
So I pass over to.
And you had a different set of slides?
Yes, I do.
That's the one. Let's see, where is the clicker?
Hello.
Yes, that's my slides. Hi everyone, my name's Marcia Keegan. I'm an economist with SGS Economics and Planning. We were commissioned by the EPSDD to look at the potential for retail and commercial space at Casey. So essentially what we were doing is having a look at what's at Casey at the moment in terms of retail space, what's the demand for retail space from Casey and surrounding suburbs, what already exists in other suburbs, and how is this likely to change over time. And looking at the way it changes over time, is there going to be demand for more retail and commercial space in Casey than compared to what there currently is at the moment? So first of all, I'll just run through the purpose of this study. I'll discuss our method. I'm afraid it might be a bit technical. Hopefully that's okay. I'll walk you through it. And then a quick summary of our findings. So the big question that we're focusing on when we did our study was, over the next 20 years, is there going to be sufficient retail demand in Casey and surrounding suburbs to justify additional retail development at blocks 12 and 13, section 132 up here? So this is what we were focusing on. So the first thing we did was we had a look at what retail space we've already got in Casey and surrounding areas. So how many people are familiar with Casey, the shops? You've been there many times? Yep, you've been to the pub. It's excellent. Go for the wings deal on Wednesdays. It's great. So first of all, you've got the main centre, which is everyone, you know where that is. That's where they've got the Aldi and the Super Barn, and they've got the gym there and so forth. That main block of shops where the Casey Jones pub is. So that's just over 8,000 square metres in that section there. And there's about, I think, 20, 25 odd shops. Then there's a little section off to the side, which is a mixed-use space. So there's apartments, townhouses off to the side, apartments above it, and then there's a row of shops. This includes a cafe, some allied medical health facilities, some beauty therapy places, and so forth. That's about 700 square metres, that area. You've got the 7-Eleven petrol station, which is about 145 square metres of retail space. And yeah, that's it. And so that comes to 9,042 square metres in total in that Casey Group Centre area. As we've also been using the catchment area of Casey, Ngunnawal, and what was the other one? Oh, Nichols, yes. And so we've also had a look at the other shops in the catchment area just to see what sort of offering that had in comparison. Now, the shops at Ngunnawal and Nichols are smaller. They're all local level shops. To be perfectly honest, they're a bit more dated, they're a bit older, they're a lot smaller, and they really don't have the same offering that the Casey shops has. You've also got Gold Creek, which also has a fair bit of retail space there, but that's sort of that's much more of a tourist type offering. It's not so much a place where you go and do your weekly grocery shop. Amaroo is sort of a bit further away, so yeah, that hasn't really been included in the Casey catchment area. But yeah, there is a yes, group centre out there, and of course you've also got Gungahlin Town Centre, where some people will choose to do their grocery shopping. Bonner that's also a bit further away and a bit more out of the centre. So we were thinking that of the people in the catchment area, if they just need to nick out for a carton of milk, loaf of bread, that sort of thing. If one of the Nichols or the Ngunnawal shops were closest, that's where they'd probably go. But if they were looking to possibly probably do a big weekly grocery shop and then maybe go for a coffee beforehand and you know, pick up their prescriptions and so forth, they'd probably go to Casey Group Centre. So this flowchart kind of explains how we've modelled the retail demand or demand for retail and commercial floor space at Casey. So what we've done, it's based on retail turnover densities, and so what this is estimates generated by a combination of Urbis data and also some of SGS's own analysis to tailor it for the ACT. To have a look at for the average centre or group centre in the ACT, how much turnover would you need per year to justify an additional square metre of floor space? So it depends on the type of store. There's different retail turnover densities for supermarkets, for clothing stores, for jewellery stores and petrol stations and so forth. But they generally range between as low as $2,000 per year per square metre, up to as high as $15,000 per square metre. Supermarkets are in general around about $11,000 per square metre. That's the amount of turnover you need per year to justify additional floor space. So we based it on that. We've started off by taking population projections out to 2036. So we've done this based on ACT suburb level populations. We've tweaked them a bit, keeping in mind the ABS projections as well. So we've tried to combine those two and come up with something that looks sensible for the next 20 years. Then we've had a look at wage growth, and we've projected that forward as well, and used that to estimate total retail expenditure. There's a group called Market Info that does small area retail expenditure estimates by household. So we're using that to say, all right, well, you've got all these people in in the Casey Group Centre catchment. We can expect that their wages are going to grow by a certain amount, and of their wages going forward, we can expect a certain amount will be spent in the shops, and that will generate demand for retail floor space. So then we have our total retail expenditure that we're expecting from the catchment. Then we have a look at retail floor space demand specifically for Casey Group Centre. So what we've had a look at is the share of expenditure in ACT that tends to go to group centres, as opposed to town centres, as opposed to local shops, as opposed to the big industrial areas like IKEA out at the airport or out at Fishwick. We broke this down by retail type and estimated, okay, well, how much demand is there for group centre floor space in the ACT, specifically in Casey? And we divided the total expenditure estimated to go to Casey by these retail turnover densities. And from that, we have an estimate of how much retail floor space is needed going forward for the next 20 years in Casey. So we've compared the current retail demand to current floor space in Casey. So if it turns out that there's so much expenditure that demand for retail floor space is going to exceed the existing floor space, then Casey Group Centre can grow and we can have floor space there. If demand is less than existing floor space, there's no need for Casey Group Centre to grow. Is that clear as mud? All right, the catchment for Casey Group Centre, we've discussed that. So that's Casey, Nichols and Ngunnawal. There is also, we understand the possibility of some infill development in surrounding areas. So we're potentially looking at, this is kind of a bit uncertain at the moment, as in exactly how many people it's going to be, exactly when it's going to occur and so forth. But in our discussions for EPSDD, we're expecting that there's going to be potentially around 15,000 more residents in Casey Group Centre's catchment. Or in the general vicinity of Casey Group Centre by 2036. This is just based on our discussions. We're a bit uncertain about the timing, so we had to make some assumptions about that. So Casey, Nichols and Ngunnawal, we're only expecting fairly modest population growth. As of now, they're reasonably well-established suburbs. We're not expecting any new giant high-rises in the immediate future. And it's not the and so population growth is expected to be fairly stable. However, there is this new potential infill development, 15,000 people. We'll see how that goes. So this is what we've done. This is what we've used as the base of our population going forward, and we're going to have a look at their expenditure and how we expect that to grow. So I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there's been fairly low growth in retail turnover in the last 10 years. It's been really quite modest. As a matter of fact, if you control for inflation and if you look at per person retail growth, it's actually been flat to negative depending on which commodity type you look at. So we're not expecting huge amounts of retail expenditure growth per person, depending on their wages. But are people going to see a big explosion in wages? If people have a lot more money, that means they have more money to spend at the shops. The answer is probably not. So this here is a chart of the wage price index in the ACT and annual ACT wage growth in percentage terms. That's the teal line there. As you can see, around about, oh hey, that was when the hiring freeze happened, thereabouts. So as you can see around about there was a big drop in ACT wage growth, and it hasn't really recovered. Over the last 5 years, it's been hovering around 2%. And the Reserve Bank is forecasting that there's going to be fairly low wage growth in the foreseeable future. They're projecting wage growth of about 2.2 to 2.3% over the next few years. So we've just estimated that that's going to stay the same for a while. We're not expecting any big wage growth. So this means that significant future growth in retail expenditure per household is not very likely. If people have a certain amount of money, they're not showing a tendency to spend more at the shops, and we're also not seeing big increases in wages or big increases in population. So what we've done is we've taken all this, we've divided it by retail turnover densities to estimate what demand there is for retail floor space at Casey in the future. So this is projecting it out to 2036. So if you recall, at Casey Group Centre at the moment, we've got just over 9,000 square metres of existing floor space. This is saying that based on these assumptions regarding population growth, wage growth and retail expenditure growth, by 2036 we're expecting total retail floor space demand of just under 15,000. That's 14,690 square metres of floor space, retail commercial floor space in 16 years' time. It is by now. So this is an increase of 5,648 square metres over the existing 9,000 square metres. So that's a reasonable increase. However, if the additional infill population is excluded, is there a pointer here? Ah, excellent. So, but if we drop out this additional infill, so this is the amount of additional floor space demand we're seeing from this extra 15,000 people we're thinking are going to come along. About 5,000 square metres of floor space is due to that. So if we exclude then, if we say, all right, this potential infill, it's not going to go ahead or it's not going to go ahead in time, then the increase in floor space demand is only expected to be about 600 square metres. That's over the next 20 years. Okay, so in summary, Casey Market Town, the Casey Group Centre, is very well designed. It's a very attractive place. It's really popular. You go there at different times of day and night. You see lots of people are bustling around. It's very lively. It's a lovely place. So the expected, however, we've got modest expected population growth in surrounding suburbs. There's a potential for some infill development, which would add more people. But wage growth and household retail expenditure growth are forecast to be quite low over the next 16 years or so. So population in these infill developments could justify more retail floor space at Casey Group Centre. However, it's entirely possible that these infill suburbs, when they come along, will be planned with their own shops. At this stage, I don't think there's any understanding whether they'd have local shops or whether they'd have their own group centres. So we're really not sure how much of that demand could potentially flow into Casey. Also, depending on the specific layout of these new areas, it may be that for a number of residents in these infill spaces, it's quicker to go to other group centres, either elsewhere in Gungahlin or in Belconnen, depending on how the suburb is laid out. So I guess essentially the findings of the retail study are that really the demand or the potential use of any additional floor space over the next 16 to 20 years is heavily dependent on what happens in surrounding suburbs. But if you just say, all right, there's going to be no further development in residential, no additional people there in addition to what the suburbs that are already there, there's only going to be a very small increase in retail growth. It could potentially be, you know, a cafe attached to a community centre or some other facility that is on site. But my knowledge of construction would suggest that you probably wouldn't go out and build a new space just based on this fairly modest demand if you're not going to get a big boost from surrounding suburbs.
Thank you very much. Questions? Andrew.
Thank you for a great presentation. My question isn't actually for you, it's actually a request to EPSD in terms of I would love to see some details about this infill. That's something I wasn't aware about and would love to know the plans.
For you, Liz? Yeah.
I think Marty was just referring to a general notion of infill. I mean, there's a lot of land between here and our northern suburbs, and you know the northern suburbs in the Belconnen side are advancing now. So it will depend a bit on our 4-year land release program, but there are no specific plans for what you might be thinking about infill in this area. I can assure you of that. I think we're talking in a more general sense in the areas that are between here and the northern border. So.
I guess that's just confusing, that either the catchment is Ngunnawal, Nichols and Casey, or it's something else. So I guess we were all thinking that's 15,000 more people in those 3 suburbs. But no. Okay, right. Good, thank you. Be interested to know where that 15,000 is coming from anyway. But
I should also clarify, I'm sorry, I haven't actually seen the reports yet. So we have to go through and analyse the reports.
just jumping in.
David Thornhill from Suburban Land Agency and look after the Greenfields development. I think what we're referring to there is the potential CSIRO development, land on the Belconnen side, up the side there, which I know there's been a number of presentations to the council on that. That's, I think, what we're referring to as that infill development, for clarification.
Okay, so a long way for Nichols, Casey and Ngunnawal. So Kevin, I'll go back this way now. I'm here.
How does the increase in online shopping factor into the need for retail?
So we've done a bit of work looking at the impact of online shopping. So absolutely, that's been quite a significant, taken quite a significant chunk of retail growth. This is probably one of the reasons why retail growth, as it shows up in ABS statistics, has been so low, such that it's negative, taking into account CPI and the number of people that it's covering. This is because obviously many people can buy things online. Some of this comes from overseas. However, I think the big factor that's going to impact group centres is going to be grocery shopping online. So at the moment, that's kind of, you know, it's in its infancy. Most people will still go and get their groceries at the shops. However, Coles and Woolworths and the big retailers, also you've got these, you know, home delivery food people who will send you kits and recipes and stuff to make your own food. If these sort of firms really take off, and if Coles or Woolies make a go of it, then it could be that there is much less demand for supermarket space at group centres. And for many group centres, because the supermarkets are their draw card, then if people aren't going to the supermarket, then chances are they're going to be spending less at other stores as well. So the short answer is a lot of that will depend on how demand for doing a grocery shopping online rolls out.
Thank you. Just one or two more questions.
I think the land is actually community use, not retail. It'll have to be rezoned. I guess the community wouldn't object. The local community wouldn't object if the money from the sale of the land goes back to the local community. That might be a possibility that we would accept. But at the moment now, it should be used for community services, not for retail.
I should point out that our scope was just to determine whether there would be sufficient demand for it to be used as retail, not whether that was the best idea.
Also, you're only partly correct, sir. The land is actually on CZ1, I think, 5, CZ5, which is commercial use, and that allows for community use as well. So.
Now this dovetails into another issue, and it was been touched on numerous times, that many people who have purchased homes in certain suburbs, the developers themselves have actually put in the presentation for people purchasing within those suburbs that on their maps specific things, community use. And one of the problems is that the definition is quite broad, and that many people in Gungahlin have been upset. And this has happened particularly with the Public Housing Task Force when they came through and basically looked at certain large lots of land in Nichols in an area probably that would have been equally as open to extra retail floor space, that they've put public housing on because it was available to the government to do that. And unfortunately there's a lot of communities within Gungahlin have felt that they have lost their community use spaces that the government has conveniently used for other uses that they felt convenient to them. And so that's exacerbated the issues within Gungahlin. So if you would look at this in a holistic terms, the reason why the Gungahlin Community Council might be asking questions and a bit prickly towards this being even considered to be used for retail spaces is in the holistic notion that a lot of community use space that you've said is open to interpretation has been used already by the government to use for the alternative purposes other than community use as most people would envision it to be, which might be like a hall to be used by the community, and the government has elected to use that space for something that the community effectively, if you were to look at it, cannot use. They cannot go to that site and actually use that site because it's being used for residential for a different purpose. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you might find that by considering that this space only putting a 500 square metre community use site might actually be not helpful for people in the community. They might negatively look at this and not be receptive to it for that reason.
Well, thank you for that. That's probably useful feedback for us from a comms point of view, but I would say we're at a very early stage in this process, so you're getting really, first comments on the studies. I will just correct you. Again, I'll emphasise it's not actually zoned for community use. If you look up the territory plan definition, it is zoned commercial, and the list of uses in commercial that is allowed is shops, retail outlets, recreation facilities, community use, restaurants, cafes and bars. So all these things are allowed in here, including community uses. So. But yeah, we can take that as comment, and in future engagement, which there will be, that will be useful to tease that out a bit further, I think. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. That's it from the team. Thank you very much for that early engagement. It's much appreciated. I think we're on a journey. Do you know when the report will come out for community review or input? No timeline yet. Okay, I'll pass that on. Okay, and look, we really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I apologise, we had a bit of a late start, so we'll try and move on quickly to our next speaker. Chris is with Evo Energy and is part of the team doing the consultation on their 5-year strategy. And I will make the slides come out in the next 10 seconds.
Right, okay.
You have to remember, just give me 10 seconds.
We're part of No, okay.
Okay, now, so are we set? Yes. Right click. Okay. So, for those who don't know, Evo Energy is the electricity poles and wires and the gas distribution network part of ActuAGL. We used to be known as ActuAGL Distribution to distinguish us from the ActuAGL energy retail company, energy retail business. But we've been functionally separated and ring-fenced from the retail business now since the late 1990s. But in the last couple of years, the regulator has required us to change our name to Evo Energy, well, not to Evo Energy, but they required us to change our name. We chose the name Evo Energy to avoid confusion with the retail business. We've had, while you've got the choice of energy retailer in the ACT, the energy retailer you use, there is a single distribution network for electricity and a single distribution network for gas, both of which are owned by Evo Energy. And we provide those sole services that bring the energy from the point where it enters the ACT to your homes and businesses. So, and that's for the gas network, that's in Canberra and as well as Queanbeyan and Bungendore. So, to explain the market structure, when you want to connect gas to your home, you call an energy retailer of your choice, and the retailer will set up your account, and they source natural gas in bulk from producers. The gas producers extract and process the gas in their offshore well or in the field, on land field, and supply it to a high pressure pipeline that's passing. The transmission pipeline, that's the high pressure pipelines, transport natural gas to a city gate facility. In Canberra, we're lucky we've got two pipelines that pass, one to the north, which is the Moomba to Sydney pipeline, and one to the east, which is the Eastern Gas Pipeline. One of them, the Moomba to Sydney, there's a pressure reduction station at what we used to call Watson, which I think now is actually in Kenny, and there's a pressure reduction station for the Eastern Gas Pipeline at Fyshwick. And at that point, the pressure's lowered and it enters the distribution network, and this is Evo Energy's network that transports gas to end users and provides individual usage information from our meters to the retailers. So the retailers source all those services for you, and their bill to you, their retail gas bill, includes all those services plus the retailer's own direct on-cost of operation that you receive. So breaking down those costs as we do in the diagram there, which is this this one? Yep. So extracting and processing the natural gas is about 42% of the total retail gas bill of an average ACT consumer. Gas transmission costs are around 9%. Distribution costs, that's ActuAGL's function, around 25% of the cost on your retail bill. Energy retail interface, 22%, that's the retailer's costs. And about 2% is other miscellaneous charges, including green schemes and those sort of things which are on the bill, which these make up the average ACT gas bill of around domestic gas bill of around $1,727 per annum. So as the sole supplier of gas, as the sole supplier of distribution services, prices for the use of our gas network are regulated, and every 5 years we have to submit a plan to the AER. The current period ends on the 30th of June 2021. Our plan sets out our forecast of customer numbers and throughput, and also forecasts of our operating maintenance, our cost of operating, maintaining, expanding and replacing the gas network to ensure that it remains safe and reliable, and other costs, the cost of our borrowings, taxes and those sort of things, which are legitimate costs. These are assessed by the AER for their reasonableness and the efficiency in terms of our production of services and conformance with the National Electricity Law and the National Electricity Rules. And central for us developing that plan is the feedback we receive from consumers and other stakeholders. So we're publishing our draft plan, as I said, this month, to begin the final stage of consultation before we submit the plan. Okay, one thing that's, well, it's a recent important development that has significant influence on our planning for the next period. In September 2019, the ACT government released their climate change strategy as part of its commitment to the net zero carbon emissions in the ACT. You'll know that the ACT has already met its target to have zero net emissions on the for electricity, but and it did that in 2019. But the climate change strategy now includes 3 actions directed at reducing natural gas as a source of greenhouse gas emissions in the ACT. And they're up there. Basically, by 2020, the ACT government will amend planning regulations to remove mandatory laying of gas pipes in new suburbs. From 2020, the government will conduct a campaign to support the transition away from gas by highlighting electric options and savings opportunities to the ACT community. And by 2024, the government will develop a plan to phase out natural gas so as to achieve zero emissions from gas by 2045. I paraphrased that a bit, but basically a transition away from gas. As a first response to this policy, Evo Energy is planning not to reticulate new suburbs because of the uncertain future of the gas network that's implied by the policy. I mean, looking at the policy, the way it's written, it's quite uncertain in terms of the future of the gas network. Many of our gas networks have a payback period of 50 to 80 years under the regulatory framework, and for us to lay pipes which then within, certainly before 2045 will be scrapped means that we lose the revenue that could have been collected from those assets, and we don't get to recover their cost. These other two natural gas-related actions of the climate change strategy strongly suggest that the ACT government's focused on all electric homes and businesses as a strategy to take advantage of the 100% renewable electricity to receive zero net emissions. So Evo Energy supports the government's policy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we do strongly recommend that the government's plan by 2024 to phase out gas pay close attention to some issues that we think are very important. First, the additional electricity infrastructure that will be required to carry the significant energy needs now satisfied by natural gas and the subsequent impact of their costs on electricity prices is a very important issue. Secondly, how to achieve an orderly transmission away from natural gas, including the cost of replacing consumers' appliances. There needs to be an orderly transition away from gas so that we don't end up with what's called a death spiral effect, where people leave the network, the prices of gas become more expensive, causing more people to leave and becoming chaotic, and people being trapped, particularly perhaps poor people trapped towards the end of that where they're paying a lot for gas and therefore avoiding using gas. And the third thing being trying to avoid as much as possible costs of stranded assets and the costs of decommissioning gas assets, which are quite substantial. The gas network, if it were decommissioned, would need to be either ripped up or the large pipes that were in the ground filled with concrete so that they don't cave in as they decay and that sort of thing. So there's a very large cost of decommissioning. This slide actually shows that natural gas is a very large provider of the ACT's home and business energy requirements. You can see from that, so the brown bit at the top is the energy supplied by gas translated into similar units or the same units as electricity, and down the bottom is the electricity supply. And so what you can see in that is that, well, I can tell you that gas supply, it says it there, that gas supplies 43% of the total static energy supply throughout the year, and it's much higher than that in winter. In fact, the peakiness of the use of gas, that big peak in winter, and also that winter peak also is focused on a daily peak in winter and summer, but particularly in winter, where people use a lot of gas, in particular in the mornings for heating their house and having showers and that sort of thing, and in the evening as well when they're using gas for heating and cooking and so on. So what the slide shows that gas is a very significant part of the ACT's energy use, and there would be a need to invest heavily in strengthening the network in areas that are already served by gas. So as an alternative to the all-electric vision of the government, we're examining the possibility of the network being used to transport renewable gas and how we can develop renewable gas sources to use in the network. The potential sources of renewable gas include biomethane from waste, hydrogen production from renewable electricity and electrolysing water with renewable electricity, and production of synthetic gas from hydrogen and CO2. These are all viable net zero emissions technologies that are in use overseas, and we believe they should be prominent in the ACT government's plan and its thinking about how to achieve net zero gas emissions from natural gas, or by replacement of natural gas. In the ACT's plan by 2024. Until the government produces its 2024 plan, the focus of our 5-year plan from 2021 is to minimise our capital expenditure for expansion. As we've said, we won't be reticulating new ACT suburbs, which reduces our capital expenditure by around $25 million over the 5-year period. And the capacity expansions that go with that will be eliminated as well. And we will be focusing on maintaining a safe and reliable service. So we've already undertaken extensive consumer engagement in developing our draft plan through activities such as our Energy Consumer Reference Council, of which Kevin Cox here is a member representing Gungahlin Community Council, a citizens' jury that we held, which was an independently selected representative group which met over 2 weekends to hear evidence and produce recommendations through our surveys and information on our website. Among the things our customers tell us are these here: that they support environmental sustainability, that they want to fully understand costs and impacts of future energy options before decisions are made, that they want to be kept informed of research, planning and transition. They're concerned about the impacts of transition, especially for vulnerable customers who they believe need to be supported. They're also concerned about affordability of the current supply and transition. They have a range of views about the continued expansion of the gas network into new developments. So, as I mentioned, Evo Energy is responding to that feedback to date by seeking to inform our actions through community consultation and best information on costs and benefits of all the options. And while we undertake work to determine our future roadmap for gas, we propose to limit expenditure during the 21 to 26 plan period so that we can keep network charges stable and avoid spending money on assets that may not be needed in the future. What these things mean for customers is that we'll continue to maintain the safety and reliability of the network. That's an absolute. We'll also keep our network prices stable so there'll be little change to your gas bill as a result of the plan. I've got to point out, though our operating and capital costs will fall from those of the current period, prices will remain stable rather than falling, because we're forecasting that that volumes of gas sold will further fall as a result of the government's initiatives to discourage gas and to also provide subsidies for transferring to electrical appliances. So the blue part of this graph here just illustrates that the 25% that's ours will be pretty stable throughout. That's our responsibility. That 25%, Evo Energy's, will be quite stable throughout the period in real terms. There's a slight fall from the current from 2021 into the first year of the new period in 21-22 of about 1.4%, and then prices will be stable. Network prices will be stable in real terms over the rest of the period. The orange part there is the part which is out of our control, where we're assuming that, for want of any other information, that will remain stable during the period, just to show that the price stability and the contribution of our 25%, which is the network charge. So to conclude, we want you to let us know what you think. The draft plan, as I said, will be published by the end of February. We will be happy to receive any feedback on it until the 2nd of April to guarantee that it can be taken into account in our submission to the AER. We're happy to take questions on tonight's presentation now, or we'll be around at the end of the meeting, or happy to receive any questions. We're aiming to speak to all the ACT community councils and also in organisations in the Queanbeyan and Palorang council communities with drop-in sessions aimed to coincide with presentations. We'll also be undertaking deep dives and they'll be announced on key elements of our plan. We also have available, I mentioned the research that we're doing to facilitate the carriage of renewable gases through our network. We're available to conduct tours of our hydrogen test facility in Fyshwick, and that facility is aimed to test the viability of using hydrogen in our current gas network infrastructure. So there's a sort of a mini network laid out there where hydrogen is electrolysed and pumped into that network and used for heating, and we've got a barbecue there and so on. So it's quite an interesting thing to see, and visits to that can be arranged. There'll also be, after we put in our submission, a formal process of review, submissions and public forums from the 30th of June, which will be organised by the AER, by the Australian Energy Regulator, through to the AER's final decision, which is going to come down in April 2021. So thank you very much for listening tonight, and happy to take any questions if they're up to the chair.
Yep. Zooming across.
I'll come over so that I can hear. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Now, in regards to phasing out gas, how will people that own apartments, because we've all got gas, are we the ones that are going to be unlucky and be stuck with the higher prices? Because my gas bill is ridiculous compared to the usage I use for just hot water. It's double my electricity usage.
Yeah, right. Well, look, there's a number of issues that the government hasn't looked at, and the sort of thing it's looking at is saying when they're saying they're going to phase out gas, they haven't looked at, for example, the situations where gas is used in apartments and also large facilities such as schools and the ANU and so on, where there isn't an easy replacement for gas. Where even in the new areas, some apartment builders, developers are still putting in gas units because they're the most effective way.
I work in the industry. We're still putting gas.
Do you?
Yeah. Gas, all the apartments have gas for hot water. That's
right, because it's kind of a superior solution in those circumstances. I mean, there are alternatives, but look, that's a problem. That's one of the sort of issues that needs to be looked at.
Because as an individual, I can't change it. Yeah. Because I'd prefer electricity. I don't want gas. But
you don't want gas, okay.
No.
but a lot of people do, though, that's the thing. Yeah. And we're finding customer numbers are still growing, even though consumption of gas is actually falling.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? A couple, very quick, we're running very late tonight, so it better be a question, not a dissertation.
One of the questions that I have is that with the transition this massive, and I'd hate to even ask you how much money the ACT government and Evo Energy has invested in the gas network that they currently have.
Yeah.
But one of the concerns that I think that even though you have your consultation with people about this transition across, I wonder whether or not your feedback from people that you've spoken to in the community has been shocked at the ACT government's choice of honestly wanting to phase out gas, because it's quite a shock to me.
Yeah. Look, we find that there is not a lot of knowledge. They reduced their strategy, their climate change strategy, only last September, and it hasn't really had a lot of exposure. When it first did, there was quite a number of people who said, "Well, wait a minute, what's going on about closing down the gas network?" And look, it's a big deal for us. We've got our regulated asset base, that is the assets that are regulated that carry the gas. is worth $500 million, you know, approximately. That's money that, like, ideally we have to get a chance to recover. If the gas network is closed down prematurely, it will mean higher prices on the face of it, because we would have to recover that faster. There's no other way for us to do it. The rate of return we get doesn't incorporate that risk, and so that's, yes, it is potentially a problem.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think. I think if you were to go 10 people on the street and say, oh, by the way, your gas infrastructure is going to be possibly useless in 2024 is when the policy starts.
When 2024 is when they're going to have a plan in place. I think, look, what we're focused on at the moment is the current 5-year review, which of course is heavily influenced by this thing coming, right? This plan and the ACT's plan to phase out gas by 2045 as a whole. But of course things start sooner than that. And
you're saying $500 million worth of infrastructure, and how much it would cost to replace all of the gas appliances in people's homes?
Yeah, that's right. That would be an unknown quantity. The government hasn't actually sort of talked about how that would happen. What is likely to happen, I think, is that, you know, they might think that as the appliances come to the end of their lives, there would be an opportunity for people to replace them, and they might provide subsidies for that purpose, and they already do. But the timing of that, you know, if you've just bought a gas heater and it's got another 15 years life or something on it, right? You know, but in 15 years the gas might be quite expensive because of the fact that you know, we've had to depreciate these assets.
I'm trying to crash through here. That's okay. Is it a good question? Yeah, good.
Yep. So, notwithstanding the ACT government's plans, you mentioned we've got 2 main gas supply routes coming past Canberra.
Yeah.
And you guys are pipes, so you're not a wholesaler?
Evo Energy is a distribution network provider. So we carry the gas on behalf of retailers.
Okay, so I guess my question is, retailers, Evo Energy, but outside of that bubble are the gas producers, but there must be wholesalers in there. So we're going to have, and you just heard government announcements about opening up the Western New South Wales gas fields, fracking, whatever they're going to do, amounts of gas to be exported. Our little bubble you can control so much within that. Well, how do we gauge the cost of gas from the supplier wholesaler side coming into it in the future?
Yeah, well, look, as I said, that production side of the gas is, you know, 42% of the cost of your retail bill. You know, supply and demand influences these things, but what we're saying is that by 2045, and you know, with steps in between, the government wants us not to rely on natural gas. This is why we're looking at renewable gas, while the government's looking at an all-electric type future. So the gas becomes kind of irrelevant in that scenario, in that the natural gas does, you know, because it's we are not going to be, the government doesn't want to use natural gas.
Well,
okay.
That's fine, but that's inconsistent with the rest of the whole country.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you're suggesting there's a difference in opinion on climate change policy in this country?
Yeah, I mean...
Breaking news.
That's
all right.
Inconceivable, yeah.
I will wrap that there. Peter has been very patient at the back of the room, and I'd like to get him forward. Chris, thank you very much. I think it's a bit of a heads up for a lot of us, and good luck with the consultation.
Yeah, thank you very much, and hope we hear from you all.
So late last year, Peter Steele, thank you. Peter Steele from Transport Canberra came along and conducted the first of a series of engagements Transport Canberra had with the community around trying to get some feedback on how the new bus network had gone. And last week there were a series of announcements suggesting that that consultation had gone pretty well, and Transport Canberra have announced the changes, and I've invited Peter to come along and talk about what those might be, and hopefully have all your questions answered. Thanks, Frank. Are you going that way?
Hi everybody. Thank you for having me. As Peter said, I was here in September last year to talk to the community as part of our ongoing conversations about the public transport network in Canberra. Tonight I'm also joined by my colleague Heidi and Joe. Heidi works with me in the network planning team, and Joe is the Director of Light Rail Services for Transport Canberra. So I'm going to mention a little bit about light rail, but if there's any more detailed questions, Joe is absolutely the right person to be asking them for. Very interesting hearing a conversation about energy use. It's our first electric bus, or new electric buses hit the road today. If anyone's interested, it's bus 490. So if you want to go and find it, it's a Yutong bus. It's a new one for us after having a trial previously. We're pretty excited about it, and we think it's going to really help us lead where we're going down the path for zero emissions. We currently have 380 diesel buses and 70 compressed natural gas buses. So as part of the government's climate change strategy, we'll look for a zero emissions of fleet by 2040, so which is quite exciting. What I'm going to do today is just take you through some of the announcements the government have made and a little bit of the story about the network and how we've gotten to where we are. Do I get a pointer or a thing? Hey. Right. So the AC government's just made an announcement about the bus network. The really key part of the network, and I'm going to try and find a thing. Hey. So the biggest change to the network is really regards the south side of the city. What that is really about is making faster travel times from the Tuggeranong Valley and into the city. And what's really important about that is making sure it happens 7 days a week. It does mean that there'll be a change to services through the Barton and Russell area, but we know that that's a big employment area Monday to Friday. So the Route 59 that'll be replacing the Rapid 5 will actually run every 15 minutes, much like the bus does today. So there'll still be frequent connections Monday to Friday through the parliamentary zone, which I've just mentioned there. There's also regional adjustments and improvements, and I'll touch on the Gungahlin ones just a second. We're also looking to increase services on the weekends, and that will commence with Saturday. More information on the timetables will be available around mid-March as we finalise the development. That includes working with our workforce to get the drivers on the road. When I was here in September, there was a few key things that we noted. The light rail capacity, there's been some announcements about that, and I'll touch on that. Travelling from the west and south of the Belconnen area, so back through here, if everyone remembers the old network, the 51 and 52 used to come all the way up, back through to Belconnen. Access to Mitchell, we've had quite a lot of conversations with the Mitchell Traders Association about how public transport works in that area, and in fact, if you go to their Facebook page, little plug for them, they are trying to speak more to their community about how transport can work through there and improve access to the area. Also some requests for infrastructure in the Gungahlin region. What I can tell you is that that was really helpful to our design process, speaking to the community councils, going out and speaking to different groups. One of the key ones, which I'm sure everyone's heard the announcements about, is the increase to rail. Again, I'll touch on that. Two big route changes in the south of Gungahlin are these local routes, the 24 and the 23. They'll start to continue back through to Belconnen. It also provides more coverage through these Belconnen suburbs, Mackellar, Gungahlin, Kaleen, the people of Lawson as well. So we're improving the connectivity through that. The Rapid 8 is doing very well coming up and down. It's got now got priority infrastructure on the intersections outside Gungahlin Lakes just there, and also on the Barton Highway. So that's the quickest way between the town centres. But the it's all right. But now the regional buses will also provide connectivity. I do know there was some talk from the community about access to Belconnen directly from this area. Interestingly, one of the challenges in the west of Gungahlin is that the Casey market town is actually very attractive. So up until the last network, we didn't have public transport access to it at all, and it's actually getting quite well used, connecting people backwards and forwards from Casey market town. We also, since we first put the network in April last year, the roads have opened up in Taylor. So this is actually really great. We'll be able to have the buses in there very early as the suburb continues to grow. So that's a very helpful change we'll be introducing. One of the big things with the light rail and the buses going through to Mitchell is at the moment customers are having to make a connection either at Wells Station or down at the Epic stop. We'll actually be changing that route to run along Flemington and down to Dixon. What that means is that Mitchell will now be accessible to a lot more people across Canberra with less connections, which Dixon being a pretty important hub for the network from Belconnen and from the south. There's also some changes to school routes in the region. We've had some very good conversations with some of the schools up in North, Good Shepherd Primary, places like that. More information about school routes will be available when we release the timetables in Term 1. Did I zoom in? Whoop. All right. Light rail. The two light rail announcements that have come out. In Term 1, the service frequency has been extended, and that's due to the good levels of use that we're seeing on the rail. The big announcement, I think, which is really exciting, is that from 28th of April, so Term 2, when we go to make the changes to the bus network, they'll also be increasing the headway of the light rail to every 5 minutes, so that'll add a lot more capacity to the service, but also, I think very importantly, extending the evening peak, so you'll be able to travel home later. And another really good one is starting services earlier on a Sunday morning. So at the moment, the rail services only start at 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings. They'll move forward to 7, so people can make the journey into the city. If there are any more light rail questions, as I said, my colleague Jo's here and she'll come up. Just a few other things on the back of last time I was here, just to touch on. We are working on Park and Ride. I know Park and Ride is something I've talked to Pete quite a lot about. My colleagues in TCCS in our infrastructure area are looking for Park and Ride locations and doing some design work. We're also looking to increase the space at the Town Centre Park and Ride out the back. And there's also the Wells Station Park and Ride, which is continuing to be developed. I did have a question, perhaps from yourself, sir, about bikes in the Town Centre. Since I was here, the bike racks have been installed along the thing. I think they're working quite well. We're getting good feedback from them. Always interested in doing more with active travel combinations, but we think it's a pretty good start. We're putting new shelters in past the Grove Retirement Village and John Paul College. Will receive new shelters, as well as some bus stops along Gungahlin Drive, which we've recently installed. Some near the suburb of Jacker. Will be continuing to upgrade bus stops and put shelters in as well. I just thought I'd throw this one in. If anyone's interested about how the historic Canberra bus shelters are moved, they're quite a piece of equipment to get moved. We have to do quite detailed design to put them in. They get embedded in concrete. They're there to stay. So they'll be the shelters that'll be going out on Gungahlin Drive. The government also announced today the commitment to introduce a new ticketing system. Really exciting. There is a procurement process underway, and there'll be more information coming out through the year. I think as a public transport user and someone who plans public transport, having really great data, but also removing barriers for people to use transport is really important. You don't have to get a MyWay card. You can bring your own device. So there's some really exciting things happening in that space. And I'll mention as well, because very important to the community up here, is that Light Rail Stage 2, it's being driven by the Major Projects Canberra, part of the ACT government, but there's a lot going on there with the design, the planning approvals for Light Rail Stage 2, which of course, I hope everybody's aware, will extend the light rail line through to Woden. And that is on track to be delivered by 2024. So pretty complex. This is Light Rail Stage 2A, which will take us up to sorry, I forgot there's two parts to it. It'll take us up to Commonwealth Park, and then the longer part is down to Woden. But the way it will come through the City West Precinct is quite exciting and really open up the city, particularly the university as well. So that's all I had to say today.
Thanks very much, Pete. It's great to see changes made. Andrew.
Just a question, because the census showed there's a significant population who live here in Gungahlin.
Yep.
And disappointed to note that the latest network changes don't address that.
So, in manner.
In terms of there's no bus connections between Gungahlin to the airport, you have to go through Civic, which turns it into about an hour and 40-minute trip.
Yep, so if we send a bus down the Majura Parkway, for example, it takes longer than the rail from Gungahlin to the city to connect to a bus. It's 24 minutes to the city, and then the bus runs frequently into there. So we can't just, so there's plenty of access from Gungahlin to the airport precinct. Yep.
With the new announcements of the routes,
Yep.
one of the things that, not I, but somebody brought up was an elderly lady. She said one of the issues that she runs into is that you've got these great new facilities like in Dixon and in Gungahlin. One of the things that she brought up was the fact there's no public toilets facilities in those areas. And that I don't use public transport really that often, but come to think of all the money that you've invested in the construction of these, do you think that might have been a bit of an oversight to not have any sort of toilet facilities or anything in those particular spots?
Oh, look, I think it's important to access amenity around public transport. There is our colleagues in city services do take care of public toilets in the ACT, so I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, but I don't disagree that they're important to be around. I can take that on notice and take it back to my colleagues about it.
Probably service the bus drivers as well, so much as the passengers themselves. I'm not really sure what the bus drivers do.
Yeah, so it's actually a very important part of what we do, which is make sure drivers get appropriate breaks. Driving heavy vehicles, they need to be rested. If you look closely at both the light rail stops at the Gungahlin and Linga, or actually not at a Linga, there's a toilet for the drivers, I'm correct, hidden away in there. It's very well hidden in the artwork. There we go. Having a great time with this. And actually, we do have toilets for the drivers that are a bit separate, because often in the ACT it's also the meal room for the drivers. So they'll take their lunch with them and they'll go in. So that is actually a really important part of our network. But often we try not to put those near the centre itself, because the driver's got to be with the bus. So we don't want to fill the bus. We don't want to fill city centres with buses. We want to take them a little bit to the edge, which is why we've got them down at the Valley Avenue at the moment, and we try to put them a little bit.
Okay. Also observe there are public toilets in the town centres and in the KCC group centre, so it's not impossible. Right, yeah. Question here.
Just going back to Darren's comment about catching public transport to Brindabella Business Park.
Yep.
If I was to catch public transport from home to Brindabella Park, and I was to be there at 8:30 a.m.
Yep.
It would take me an hour and 36 minutes on public transport to do that.
Yep.
When it's a 30-minute drive. How is that acceptable in the nation's capital that it takes 3 times longer to get to work?
So by virtue of putting a business park out at the airport away from transport, that's made our job harder. So moving businesses out to a area that's outside the city centre, that makes it harder to get people there on transport. That's just what it is. That happens in all cities that decide to build business parks away from central areas.
It's not new. It's been there for quite some time.
Yep, but the challenge is still the same, which is our resources are trying to move as many people around our city as possible, and we need to move them as efficiently as possible, and the best way to do that is to bring them into a central node like the city and push them out.
So we've had similar conversations about a lot of the direct, whether it's Gungahlin to Tuggeranong or Gungahlin to...
Yeah.
But I guess the bottom line with this is, if you did have a Gungahlin to Russell bus, Brindabella bus direct, would there be whatever the threshold number is of patrons to do it? And
so being the business park as it is, it's complex. You've got to deal with, not everyone starts work at the same time. This is the same issue I've talked about with Tuggeranong as well. Not everyone starts work at the same time. Not everyone finishes work at the same time. Do you send 3 services a day? Do you send 10? Do you send 20? So it's actually quite a complex conversation to talk about sending direct buses anywhere. Direct buses like that are the most expensive form of transport. Often that driver can do one thing all day. So we will pay a driver 4 hours to do a 1 hour trip, potentially. So these are the kind of things when we're building a transport network that has 450 buses, 4,000 trips a day in it, we need to consider. We've got a confined resource, budget, fleet, drivers, and often sending buses out to business parks directly is a very inefficient use of those resources. So that's part of the balance that we have to make as transport planners.
Okay. All right. One more question here, one online, and
so I guess the question is, I don't think there's a bus service even out to Fairburn now. Is that right? It's been shelved.
No.
So
the use at Fairburn was, again, very sporadic. I think off the top of my head, less than 20 a day at all sorts of times. And it's actually quite a distance from the airport out to Fairburn.
Yeah, and that's fine.
From a kilometre basis of a bus network.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, is it within your purview to look at novel solutions? So Defence runs a shuttle out via Fairburn, etc. But
yeah, they do. Yeah.
You've got most of the government in the triangle, okay? But Terry Snow is making a shed load out of Fairburn and Brindabella Park.
Yep.
Why doesn't he just give some back and you guys get into a bit of a partnership and work out a better commuting system?
Yeah.
We're not here to make him a shed load of money.
No, so the ACT government does work closely with the airport. Obviously, there's a lot of conversations, planes coming in and out and all that kind of thing. There has been a little bit of talk with the fires that happened through here as well about another access road through the top of the airport. Now, that would help facilitate access a lot better from a transport perspective, but also it would mean that Fairburn's not landlocked with the single road in and out, so there's benefits as well. That would make it more accessible. Just on the point about DFAT or whomever, there is so much different transport that we're competing with. They do spend quite a bit of money running shuttles in and around these areas. I don't know if you've been to the airport, but we'd also be competing against quite a lot of car parking, which is often a prerequisite of moving out there. So they'll build some more car parking. So I'm not here to say that running buses to the airport or to the business park wouldn't be a good idea. It's just an incredibly complex issue that we then need to work through. So.
But it shouldn't be part of your business model that you think you might be taking business away from Terry Snow's car park.
I think the process that led to Terry Snow making money happened several decades ago, and wasn't all our fault.
It is challenging though. So we've also got the Majura Park complex, and as they don't join together, we've got two different bus routes going out there. They've got different wants and needs. People are working retail at one, people are working in offices at the other, but also retail. So it's a very complex area, the airport.
Yeah, unexpected. Online person or real? Yeah, okay.
Online question here. What's the plan to remediate the amount of traffic using the Majura Parkway? Will there be a direct bus route from Gungahlin to Fyshwick, Manuka, Kingston?
So I won't speak too much about traffic remediation because that's not really my space. What I can say is that by continuing to increase the capacity on the light rail, the travel time there is indisputable. I think the bus was taking about 52 minutes the last time we were running it there, and now we're guaranteeing a 24-minute run. The thing about that 24-minute run is it's not going to go away in 5-10 years' time like a bus might have. It will be there. So the attractiveness of this light rail system is that it's going to build travel times that will be locked in through the out years, and that's what's really important. I can't promise that with a bus in mixed traffic because we have buses coming up the highways from the south, they get stuck, there's freight on them as well, there's all sorts of issues. I'd ideally not be running buses, to be honest, on highways. They're better in the city where people can get on and off them. Doing high speeds, people standing, there's all sorts of issues like that too. Really, the light rail, the capacity there, the guaranteed travel time, that's really the movement function. And as that rail network expands, and I know I'm talking 30, 20, 40, the travel times and the guaranteed travel times around the city, that will be the real benefit that we'll be able to give people.
All right. Okay. Just trying to get out by 8:30. That's all good stuff. Everyone loves a bus.
Yeah, it's just about Yerrabee Pond. They used to have a bus service until about 6 years ago. It was taken off with a little loop. Bus drivers were having problems navigating Phyllis Ashton back into Nellie Hamilton Avenue. I've noticed over the last 2 weeks there's been learner drivers driving around the little loop. Do you think it'll ever come back?
So learner bus drivers?
Yeah, learner bus drivers. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So I just thought it might be anticipated that they had to drive around the loop again.
No, I will speak to the traders while they're down there. So this has come a few times. Mainly the reason why there's no bus in there is because a lot of these routes, what they're doing is trying to bring people into the town centre as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And by diverting backwards up through that area, we would lengthen travel times, because these are the people we're really trying to get moving on the bus into the...
That's another 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
Sorry?
It adds another 3 or 4 minutes to go on the...
3 or 4 minutes in a connected bus network can be all the difference between a connection and not. So
my final comment would be that's just got a little mixed-use commercial area which is not serviced by a bus. It's probably one of the few areas in Canberra which doesn't have a bus service.
Where's this, sorry?
The Yerrabee Pond.
Yeah, so incredible amount of coverage in Canberra. We're still well over the government's target of 95%. There are little pockets that are more difficult to get to.
Yeah, that's what's been a bit of a challenge. Anything else? All right. Thank you particularly for getting a bus into Taylor early. I think it's a really good precedent to set to get a bus in as soon as possible. I know you're not always in control of roads in those areas.
We're quite excited about that one.
Yeah. So let's hopefully get that word out that you're in there early. So thanks very much for coming on, Peter. And look, honestly, I think Transport Canberra done a good job of responding to a lot of heat out of that, and I thank you for that. Cheers.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, so we'll wrap up tonight. Thanks for coming along. We've got a ridiculous number of speakers lined up for next month. Hopefully some of them will drop off and move to April. Drop off the list, not off the list. But yeah, we've got a lot on, and if you've got anything specific you want to talk about, please let us know. Cheers.